Hi guys, this is CE Divine with part 2 of the factory stereo integration build. Today I'm showing the spot that you can run your amp wire through. It's on the passenger side. There's no drilling involved. It's a pretty simple process. It took me about 20 minutes to finally kind of figure it out. I know Wally on here had mentioned there was this spot under there, but kind of taking it apart took me a little bit to get what it is. Now what it is, you've got the door sill right there, which I've already removed. I already did some pre-installation stuff. I needed both hands, couldn't be holding a camera. But there are 1, 2, 3 clips holding it in, and that comes out pretty easily. Then you'll kind of want to peel your carpet back. Now they're kind of close to where the center console begins. You can see that little rubber bulkhead right there. You can see I've already got the amp wire ran through it. That bulkhead, when I first started, I started trying to pull the whole thing out and it wasn't coming out. But I finally got it and then realized something was wrong. I started looking. There's this little rubber piece that goes down in the middle of it that separates so it can close around the wire loom. So you don't have to pull on the whole thing, just get a flat-bladed screwdriver in there, and this pries out pretty easily. It wasn't glued in or anything. And then once you've got that, kind of stick your finger down in there, and you'll feel that there's a rubber boot that you'll want to cut a hole through. Now I used my good friend, Mr. Old Timer, and just cut a little slot through there, and then started feeding the amp cable through. And then once you've got about 1.5 feet or 2 feet, turn your wheel all the way to the right, and you can kind of see back in there. You've got the CV axle, and then behind that there's the tie rod. That the wire, you can see it sticking down through there. I've already got it ran up through the engine bay so you can't see it. But you can take that and then run it behind that tie rod for the steering linkage. And then you can also see a little bit of it back down in there. You can kind of see the lower area is the CV axle, and then right behind it that steering linkage. And what I've done is once I got the amp wire ran up, I actually ended up having to push it through on that line right there. I think that's the AC line, so I could reach it because I couldn't get my arm down in there. And then I ran it behind the coolant reservoir right along this wire loom, and here I've about got it ran up to the battery. So what I'm gonna do, I didn't want to leave you guys out on everything. I'm gonna push just a little bit more of the cable through there so I can have something to play with. You see this cable feeds through very easily now. And that should be enough. And yes, it is. So there's the amp wire. And here I've got a side post and top post battery. I'm going to run to AutoZone later and get a side post. That little ring terminal is big enough to fit on a standard GM side post battery terminal extension. Now something you always want to do is fuse the amp wire within 18 inches of the battery. Our friends at Kicker, I love Kicker wiring, have given us a little cheat right here. That is about 1 foot from the end of the terminal. You've got these 2 areas of heat shrink on there, and then that little gap in there. That gap is where this little guy goes. This is your fuse block. You've got an input, output, and the top of it pops off. And there it is. It's a 50 amp fuse. And then on the side you've got the hex head screws. I haven't undone these to see what size those are, but so you'll undo those, cut that wire, and then strip back, I would say about 1/2 inch on either side of it, and then feed it in through there, tighten those down. And then what I think I'm going to do is probably mount the fuse block on my underhood fuse panel. I'm not completely sure if that's what I'm going to do, but it's what I'm leaning toward. I'm going to play around with it more here in just a little bit. And then for running the amp wire, what you're going to need to do, you'll just want to take all of these trim panels off the side. You've got one here on the seat belt that goes over the upper piece and the lower piece. That will need to come off for this lower piece to come out. And then the amp wire can go underneath the carpet and along underneath the panels here. You can even kind of stick it back underneath that plastic stripping there, so it's out of the way of the quick clips to put on there. So I'm going to continue, but you should be able to continue on through the back doing that same thing. This will need to come off, same story. This is all one piece, so there are 1, 2, and it looks like 3 pieces that will need to be removed. Now, for those of you with the folding seat, our job is probably a little bit easier. All I'll need to do is fold up the lower seat portion, and then I should be able to, here, we can check it out here just real quick. I can get all this crap out of the way. Yeah, the amp wire can feed right under there. And there's still crap in the way. And then the seat back can fold down. And I believe right here is where I'm going to mount the amp. I had mentioned in an earlier post that I wanted to have the storage room on this back seat when I fold it down, so I thought about mounting it on the side. But the more I look at it, there's not a big enough area to mount the amp on the side, so on the seat back seems like a nice solid location. It'll need to mount inboard just a little ways to clear this. But so right about smack dab in the middle of that, and I'll still have the other side for storage, because since I don't have my truck accessible to me anymore, it's at my mother's house, then I do use this for hauling some stuff. So that's why I wanted to avoid putting a subwoofer in, one of the reasons. And the other reason is because I have a 1700 watt stereo in my truck, so there's no need to have 2 vehicles that go thump in the night. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Since I was going into it blind, it took me a little longer than it'll probably take you guys, which is the reason I'm making these videos, so no one has to go in putting a stereo in their car blind. To add to the PAC line-out converter, there are 2 versions of it available, part number 1416 and 1416A. The non-amplified, just factory stereo, non-Bose Impalas will need 1416. If you have the Bose system, PAC also makes the 1416A, the A obviously for amplified. I have a friend that he accidentally got the 1416 regular in his car, which is where I found out about him. He discovered that the Pioneer stereo in those, I think they're Pioneer, was amplified, being a premium factory system. And so what he had to do was hack the thing apart and re-splice the wires in order of the pinout going into the amplifier in the trunk. But those of you with the amplified system, you'll have a little bit easier job because you won't have to take the stereo out. Since the amplifier is in the back, everything will plug up there going into the amplifier. But that's everything for now. I probably won't get to pulling the door panels apart because I'm getting ready to go to the shooting range in a few minutes, but tomorrow I'll be pulling the door panels apart to do the wiring in those. And tonight, while it's dark outside, I may come out and I'll pull my A-pillars off and work on mounting those tweeters up. And I can post a video of that tonight while I'm working on that. But again, this is CE Divine. We'll see you tomorrow.